Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. I hope you all enjoyed the last video and the more chill, laid back format. As you can see, we're continuing on with that idea. And I wanted to do another video because I've been doing a lot of fiction reading this year, as I mentioned in the last video. If you haven't watched that, you may be confused about the chill vibes and also what I'm talking about. So go check out that other video. I'll do a link there. So I've been reading a lot more fiction, and I wanted to share something from the book that I just finished, because oftentimes we view nonfiction and fiction as being two very different forms of reading, which oftentimes, sure, they are. But this case, like there are things to be found in fiction writing to elicit feelings and a response and lessons to be learned, I guess, for lack of a better way to put it. And this one struck me so much. As soon as I got done, I was listening to it on audiobook. So as soon as I got done listening to it, I had to stop, go into Miley's office, and share with her the story because it was just very, very well done. So this is from Rhythm of War by Brandon Sanderson. There are no spoilers for the story in what I'm about to do. This is a story told within the story to convey a lesson to a character. So literally no plot details are going to be given, nothing. I have literally pulled the actual story from the pages and just kind of copy pasted it into one thing. So that's what I'm going to read. I'm going to read you the story, so bear with me, but it's necessary for the context. So hopefully this video won't be as long as the last one when I say that, but let's get into it. And I'm going to be looking at the story, not at the camera. So just, I don't have this story memorized, but I want to do it justice by like reading it. So yeah, just, I'm going to be looking here. Okay. So the story is called The Dog and the Dragon. The dragon was a brilliant pearlescent color with silver running along the contours of its body. One day, the dog saw this dragon flying overhead. The dog marveled, as one might expect. He had never seen anything so majestic or grand. The dragon soared in the sky, shimmering with iridescent colors in the sunlight. When it curved around and passed above the dog, it called out in a mighty challenge, demanding in the human tongue that all acknowledge its beauty. The dog watched this from atop a hill. Now, he wasn't particularly large, even for a dog. He was white with brown spots and floppy ears, not of any specific breed or lineage, and small enough that the other dogs often mocked him. He was a common variety of a common species of a common animal that most people would rightfully ignore. But when this dog stared at the dragon and heard the mighty boast, he came to a realization. Today, he'd encountered something that he'd always wished for but never known. Today, he'd seen perfection. And he had been presented with a goal. From today, nothing else mattered. He was going to become a dragon. The dog sat upon that hilltop through an entire night and day staring, thinking, dreaming. Finally, he returned to the farm where he lived among others of his kind. These farm dogs all had jobs, chasing livestock or guarding the perimeter, but he, as the smallest, was seldom given any duty. Perhaps to another, this would be liberating. To him, it had always been humiliating. As any problem to overcome is merely a set of smaller problems to overcome in a sequence, he divided his goal of becoming a dragon into 3 steps. First, he would find a way to have colorful scales like the dragon. Second, he would learn to speak the language of men like the dragon. Third, he would learn to fly like the dragon. The dog chose the scales first as it seemed the easiest, and he wanted to begin his transformation with an early victory. He knew the farmer owned many seeds in a variety of colors, and they were the shape of little scales. Because he was not a thief, the dog did not take these, but he asked the other animals where the farmer obtained new ones. It turns out the farmer could make seeds by putting them in the ground, waiting for plants to grow, and then taking more seeds from the stalks. Knowing this, the dog borrowed some seeds and did the same, accompanying the farmer's eldest son on his daily work. As the youth worked, the dog moved alongside him, digging holes for seeds with his paws and planting them carefully with his mouth. It was an amusing scene, watching the dog work. The farmer's eldest son found the dog's actions quite amusing. Then incredible, as the dog went out each day gripping a watering can in his teeth. The little dog watered each seed just as the farmer did. He learned to weed and fertilize, and eventually the dog was rewarded with his own small crop of colorful seeds. After replacing what he'd borrowed from the farmer, the dog got himself wet and rolled in the seeds, sticking them all over his body. He then presented himself to the other dogs. Do you admire my wonderful new scales? He asked his fellow animals. Do I not look like a dragon? They, in turn, laughed at him. Those are not scales, they said. You look stupid and silly. Go back to being a dog. The dog slunk away, feeling foolish and hurt. He had failed at his first task, to have scales like a dragon. The dog, however, was not daunted. Surely if he could speak with the grand voice of the dragon, they would all see. And so the dog spent his free time watching the children of the farmer. There were three: the eldest son, who helped in the fields, the middle daughter, who helped with the animals, and the toddler, who was too young to help, but was learning to speak. The dog figured that the best way to learn the language of men was to study the youngest child. So the dog played with the baby, stayed with him, and listened as he began to form words. The dog played with the daughter too, and helped her with the yard work. He soon found he could understand her if he tried hard. But he couldn't form the words. He tried so hard to speak as they did, but his mouth could not make that kind of speech. His tongue did not work like a human tongue. Eventually, while watching the tall and serious daughter, he noticed she could make words of humans on paper. The dog was overjoyed by this. It was a way to speak without having a human tongue. The dog joined her at the table where she studied, inspecting the letters as she made them. He failed many times, but eventually learned how to scratch the letters in the dirt himself. The farmer and his family thought this an amazing trick. The dog was sure he had found a way to prove he was becoming a dragon. He returned to the other dogs in the field and showed them his writing ability by writing their names in the dirt. They, however, could not read the words. When the dog explained what the writing was, they laughed. This is not the loud and majestic voice of a dragon, the dog said. This is speaking so quietly nobody can hear it. You look silly and stupid. Go back to being a dog. They left the dog to stare at his writing as the rain began to fall, washing the words away. He realized they were correct. He had failed to speak with the proud and powerful voice of the dragon. But there was still hope. If the dog could just fly, if he could achieve this feat, the dogs would have to acknowledge his transformation. This task seemed even harder than the previous two. However, the dog had seen a curious device in the barn. The farmer would tie bales of hay with a rope and then raise and lower them using a pulley in the rafters. This was essentially flying, was it not? The bales of hay soared in the air. And so the dog practiced pulling on the rope himself and learned the mechanics of the device. He found that the pulley could be balanced with a weight on the other side, which made the bales of hay lower slower and safely. The dog took his leash, tied it around him to make a harness, like the ropes that wrapped up the hay. Then he tied a sack slightly lighter than he was to the rope, creating a weight to balance him. After using his mouth to tie the rope to his harness, he climbed to the top of the barn's loft and called for the other dogs to come in. When they arrived, he leapt gracefully off the loft. It worked. The dog lowered down slowly, striking a magnificent pose in the air. He was flying. He soared like a dragon had. He felt the air around him and knew the sensation of being up high, with everything below him. When he landed, he felt so proud and so free. Then the other dogs laughed the loudest they had ever laughed. That is not flying like a dragon, they said. You fell slowly. You look so stupid and silly. Go back to being a dog. This, at long last, crushed the dog's hopes. He realized the truth. A dog like him simply could not become a dragon. He was too small, too quiet, too silly. What was that? The dog looked up confused. He heard noises, sudden shouting, yells of panic. The dog raced out of the barn to find the farmer and his family huddled around the small farmyard well, which was barely wide enough for the bucket. The dog put his paws up on the edge of the well and looked down. Far below, in the deep darkness of the hole, he heard crying and splashing. A pitiful, gurgling cry was barely audible over the splashing. The littlest child of the farmer and his wife had fallen into the well and was drowning. The family screamed and wept. There was nothing to be done. Or was there? In a flash, the dog knew what to do. He bit the bucket off of the well's rope, then had the eldest son tie the rope to his harness. He wrote "Lower me" in the dirt and then hopped up on the rim of the well. Finally, he threw himself into the well as the farmer grabbed the crank. Lowered down on this rope, the dog flew into the darkness. He found the baby all the way underwater, but he shoved his snout in and took hold of the baby's clothing with his teeth. A short time later, when the family pulled him back up, the dog appeared holding the littlest child, wet, crying, but very much alive. That night, it rained on the other dogs, who slept outside in the cold barn, which leaked. But the little dog snuggled into a warm bed beside the fire, hugged by the farmer's children, his belly full. And as he did, the dog sadly thought to himself, I could not become a dragon. I'm an utter and complete failure. Okay, let's unpack that story. Spoiler alert, there's a bit more to the story that I'm going to reveal later on in the video. But that is the story as it's presented in the book initially. And woo, that just, I don't know about you all, but right here and right here and right here, Yeah, that's a very effective and evocative fairy tale that Sanderson included in his high epic fantasy story, that is so accurate and true to how so many of us feel when we're on a journey towards personal growth, development, fulfillment, whatever word you want to use, where we dictate these very specific things that we want to do. We want to lose X amount of pounds. We want to run Y amount of miles. We want to spend Z amount time reading. Insert any goal that you might have. Or if we're following the atomic habits mindset, then habits that we want to establish. Like, I want to live the life of a fit and healthy person. And we can look at these different metrics that we're using to measure our success in that endeavor. And it's so easy to apply metrics to a specific desire or goal and just completely miss the trees for the forest. Like, we're looking at the broader picture and we're feeling like a failure because we don't feel like we are a fit and healthy person. We don't feel like our clothes are fitting better, when in actuality there are things that we have accomplished as part of this journey that are 100% worth celebrating and are astonishing. And oftentimes we surround ourselves with people that don't acknowledge those accomplishments either, because they either, like the dogs in the story, don't understand the accomplishments. They can't conceptualize what those mean. Like the fact that the dog in the store was able to learn how to write with a stick in the dirt, and he went and showed the other dogs, but they can't read. And so they don't understand. They can't understand. And so it's very akin to somebody that wants to run more, running their first mile. Like, those of you that have never run or have never had a hard time, people that have run from an early age, like people that did track or something like that at a very young age, also I feel like tend to lose scope of the difficulty of something like running, just like people that never do it. Where if somebody like runs their first mile, like the first time you run a mile without stopping to walk is huge, because like I can't even contextualize the because. It just is. Like, it's such a test of endurance to do it the first time out. And if you go to your friends who don't run and don't have any desire to run and say, I ran a mile, they're going to smile and nod their head, but they're not going to give you the kind of response that you want. It's very similar to when, not the time that stuck, but there were countless times when I quit smoking. And if you are a smoker or somebody who has quit smoking, you can always tell when you tell people that you quit smoking who was a smoker and who wasn't. Because the people that never smoked or never got addicted to cigarettes will pat you on the back, give you a thumbs up, be like, that's awesome, good for you. The people that have quit smoking, it's a different connection. There's an understanding of like, oh, that's incredible. Like, there's just a deepness of understanding there because you've gone through it too. And so those moments are truly what can allow you to sing when you're on a journey of personal development. And so, like the dog in the story, if you're constantly running up against people who don't understand or will sometimes actively antagonize your journey and your goals. We talked about in the last video, Voltaire saying the perfect is the enemy of the good, and how we can spend a lot of time researching and scrutinizing the best methodology to do something, and that can paralyze us to actually trying to accomplish something. It absolutely happens with other people as well. You will tell somebody, yeah, I've lost 20 pounds. And they're like, oh, that's incredible. What are you doing? And you tell them like, oh, I've heard that's dangerous. I heard you should be doing this other thing. No, I heard that, just for an example, I'm not making any kind of dietary advice or throwing shade anywhere, but like somebody might say, I've heard that keto is very dangerous. You should be going vegan instead. And it's just like, I got it. Like, I I know you might not know what you're doing, but what you're doing is working for you in the moment. And so it's really easy to get thrown off track by other people criticizing the methodology of your accomplishments as well, telling you you're not actually flying. You're just lowering yourself down on a rope slowly. When dang it, it sure feels like I'm flying. Like I'm flying, I'm falling through the air in a controlled manner and I can strike a pose. That sounds like flying to me. So it's so easy. And that's why this story, I think, resonates with me so well, is there's so many different levels of a journey of personal growth and personal development that this rings true. Like, first you are unsatisfied with who you are, and you see this this bastion of perfection, which in our world we are inundated constantly with ideals and like manufactured perfection. And I think it's very telling. Once again, the layers of the story are so good because you know what's real? A dog. You know what's not real? A dragon. The dog's ideal of perfection isn't even real. It's a mythical being that doesn't exist. And that's the standard the dog's holding itself against to try and attain. And I didn't even put that together until you're witnessing those puzzle pieces falling into place. So welcome aboard. So yeah, that is, and the sadness of the ending of the story. This dog is sleeping in a warm bed, snuggled up with the farmer's children, one of whom he saved earlier that day because of the skills he's picked up. And the thought that he has to himself is, I cannot become a dragon. I'm an utter and complete failure. Let me tell you something. During this whole, like, the downtime of the channel, I can't remember the exact timeline, but I ran a 5K. I didn't run the entire thing. I finished a 5K. Let's be more clear. It wasn't like a registered, like, I didn't go to a race or anything, but like I got on my treadmill on a Sunday morning, I think, and just hit go on the treadmill and didn't stop until I hit 3.1 miles. And that's great. That's good. That I rolled around in the seeds and covered myself in colorful scales. I didn't feel like a dragon at the end of it. I still very much felt like I wasn't doing well in my journey and my goals. The scale wasn't moving in the right direction. The clothes weren't fitting the way I wanted them to. The 5K was a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. And I woke up the next morning in just incredible pain. Not like, oh, I'm injured pain, just my body going, what have you done? And so, yeah, that is very much a moment where I was the dog in this story of like, I know what the picture of the dragon is in my brain. I know the impossible dream that I want to attain is up there. And it's very difficult to disavow myself of that mental image of the way that I want to look and be able to present myself to the world, and just acknowledge the things that I am able to do now that a year ago I was not able to do in any capacity whatsoever. And you know, it's hard. It's difficult. This is me subtly checking the time on this video to make sure I'm not rambling too much. And so in that vein of having to remove the dragon from your mind, I wanted to share something from The Mountain Is You by Brianna West, which I've referenced on the channel before. Phenomenal book, nonfiction, if you want to go check that out. Rhythm of War by Brandon Sanderson, also phenomenal. It's book 4 in a series, and each of the books is over 1,000 pages. So it'll take you a while to get to the dog and dragon story. But this quote from Brianna West, your new life is going to cost you your old one. It's going to cost you your comfort zone and your sense of direction. It's going to cost you your relationships and friends. It's going to cost you being liked and understood. It doesn't matter. The people who are meant for you are going to meet you on the other side. You're going to build a new comfort zone around the things that actually move you forward. Instead of being liked, you're going to be loved. Instead of being understood, you're going to be seen. All you're going to do is lose what was built for a person you no longer are. Yeah, I mean, it's a tough journey, and that dog in the story had to leave behind the other dogs on the farm, his people that he closely associated himself with, but never accepted him for who he wanted to be, and found his new place in the house with the humans. And now it's time to share the real ending of the story, because in the context of the narrative, the person telling the story presents the ending I presented to you. And the person hearing the story pushes back and says, that's not the ending. That can't be the ending. And the storyteller finally acknowledges, no, that's not the real ending. Here's the real ending. That night, the little dog snuggled into a warm bed beside the fire, hugged by the farmer's children, his belly full. And as he did, the dog thought to himself, I doubt any dragon ever had it so good anyway. I'm going to leave it with that. Thank you all for watching the video. Hope you enjoyed this. Let me know what you thought down in the comments below. Share your story of being a dog, trying to be a dragon. I look forward to hearing that down in the comments. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share this video. The channel's still really new, and so anything that any of you all can do is an immense help to help grow the channel. So thank you all so much. I will see you next time.